GM. My name is Xylo Drone, and I'm the CEO of Ordum. We're a public good grants aggregator. And as you know, grants are inherently tied to governance, which is why we have to research it and study it. So today I will present the anatomy of governance, which basically TLDRs, our current user journey in governance across ecosystems, where frictions occur, and just the basic reasons why we need governance, but also why we should question how we design our governance models. So I will begin this presentation by mansplaining these terms, because I want you to think about blockchains beyond what they are. We need to think of them maybe as a state, or perhaps as a religious institution. Because when you think about it, a blockchain organization is not so much different from the organization of the Catholic Church. The reason why I say this is because the Catholic Church is actually quite decentralized. If we go beyond something that is a belief and the religious leader, in this case the Pope, the church functions in a way of smaller institutions across the globe, which support each other. And now let's apply this to the architecture, the organizational architecture of a blockchain. So we can see a project, a token, or a chain as a belief or a religion that we believe in. This is how inherently money also gets value, right? So then beyond that, we have a spiritual leader, which is usually the founder. And we have organizations working to a common goal. And then we also have everybody that's an ecosystem participant, whether they're a builder, whether they're retail, investor, and so on. So I think that the majority of blockchains currently, because of the structure, function in a very centralized manner. And this is what I think we should try to achieve. First of all, we need to eliminate the founders as a spiritual leader. And the project itself shouldn't be a belief system. It should provide value to its users. In order to decentralize even further, we need DAOs and sub-DAOs to help manage basically different aspects of an institution. So for an example, we can have sub-DAOs that work in marketing, and then we can also have sub-DAOs that work in development, and so on. I think that near governance shows a very good example of this, and how they function. And I think that this is basically the future of decentralized organizations and blockchains. The next thing we need within governance and why it matters is a way to come to a consensus. Sure, we have consensus mechanisms like proof of work or proof of stake, which define what's basically true or not. But we need to come to a consensus in order to avoid forks, because they generally undermine the trust of the entire network. The best example of this, obviously, is Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. And for an example, we know that Caesar got stabbed because he wanted to become a king. In this case, Ethereum split because there was, I'm sure that quite a few of you know, there was a 50 million DAO hack, and some part of the community wanted to say that code is law, and the other one wanted to protect the users. Which one you think is right is obviously dependent on your own values and beliefs, but we should try and avoid these disagreements for the purpose of more harmonious institutions and organizations. In regards to the types of consensus, it comes down only to two. They're technical and they're financial. So obviously we need technical consensus to avoid forks and so on. And we need financial to fund the sub-DAOs and DAOs for the purpose of broader decentralization. So if we look at why countries decentralize within themselves and within the regions, It makes sense because it's basically a division of labor. In order to achieve this division of labor and actually maximize the skills within each unit, we need more people, and we need more organized people in their smaller units that work with their strengths and not their disadvantages. Because if we look at a corporate structure right now, each company creates their boxes and their roles within which people are crammed. And I think we need to reevaluate this and evaluate every single individual, their strengths and weaknesses, and give them the things that they're really good at, and create smaller groups like this. So we have a reliance on our systems, and in order to keep these systems more humane, we should question which kind of rules we put within them as well. But as mentioned previously, we should focus on a good labor division. So what is the common user journey within governance? Oddly enough, it's very similar within every ecosystem. I'm not sure if you can see this well, but how it goes is that every individual needs to familiarize themselves with what blockchain is, with how the technology works, and so on. Then we need to eventually find a team, create an idea, we make our applications, then we have an evaluation process and a discussion within the community where the community gives us feedback. Once this feedback has been taken into account, we go to the voting phase, and then whether it passes or not, we get payment. Then once the project is ready, we report, and then we eventually get some kind of social score that is not necessarily on chain, but is very humane. So now, within this whole user journey, we can see where friction occurs, and it starts at the very beginning. Unfortunately, we have this misconception by the general public that blockchain, or let's say crypto, is all about 10x. And until we think that the blockchain is about 10x and not about something else, we're going to have an issue, because that means that our industry will never go beyond stocks and things like that. So we, as an entire industry and as a community, need to do whatever we can to educate the general public of the utility of a blockchain. This, in my opinion, can be done actually in the best way through centralized exchanges. I'm not sure how many of you use Kraken, but they have a little TLDR for every single project. And I think that retail needs to understand that their tokens could be used for something else, for an example. Then we need simpler explanations on what governance is, how to participate in it, to encourage people to have better ideas to receive funding, or perhaps even better ideas for network upgrades. And we need to bring more people in that are skilled in various fields. So then, when it comes to the application process, we have an issue here because it's not straightforward. It's not like filling out a form or something like that. For example, in Polkadot, currently you need to submit something called a pre-image. So you would, in order to put in a date when you receive your funding, you basically need to input a block. Even myself, when we were doing it for Ordum, I was very unfamiliar with it. And people often make mistakes. So we need to lower the barrier entry for talented individuals to apply for grant funding to form the sub-DAOs that were mentioned. Then in the evaluation and discussion process, we have a problem of relevance. Because as you know, well, one of the problems of social media is that every person got a voice. So this is kind of what happens on proposals very often as well. Whose opinion should we take into consideration? Who is an expert and who isn't? And how do we improve this? I think this can also be resolved through sub-DAOs. of experts that are actually paid and incentivized to review proposals in common faith, like in good faith. Otherwise, we will always have the problem of relevance. After that, in the voting phase, we have the same issue, but also we go to the beginning and the lack of understanding and the lack of turnout in the entire network. And then, yeah, we go on, and within the payment and execution and motion phase, there is a question of management of funds, and there is the obvious fluctuating price, which can be quite inconvenient. So whether these should be stable coins, whether treasuries should convert these grants into stable coins, that's a matter of like another question, but it's definitely an issue for the applying team. And when it comes to credit, obviously in reporting, there is a matter of a lack of accountability because we don't have systems or UIs in place that hold people accountable for what they do. And we definitely have a lack of analytics of whether a treasury spend has been good or bad, for an example, on a yearly basis. So now when we get to actual problems, if we aggregate them, we can kind of say that all of these fall within infrastructure and UI, as mentioned, which can be probably resolved through further building and designs of systems. However, throwing code at this will probably not resolve it. It will require quite a bit of trial and error to see what works and what not, because at the end of the day, governance is an issue within our entire society. Well, not necessarily an issue, but democracy has been used for quite a long time, and whether there is a model that succeeds it, we're about to find out, and I think this is why governance in blockchain is very exciting. So, as mentioned, the people problems are probably the most difficult to resolve because of we can't necessarily have machines governing people, because then that creates a whole nother problem. So one of the things I haven't mentioned yet is that once somebody votes for you for your proposal, for an example, let's talk about the funding side, you inherently feel like you want to give something back to them. And people shouldn't vote for a proposal because they will get something in return. But it's very difficult to kind of impact this. And then we have the inherent problem, the elephant in the room, which is the fact that our governance models are based on financial power. I think that until our governance models are based on financial power, we will always have the problem of whales ultimately making the decisions for the entire network. So the potential solutions, we're considering at Ordum, for an example, but everywhere and talking to other people from the Polkadot ecosystem, from other ecosystems, hopefully we can all come together to different solutions for all of these issues. But for now, the hypothesis at Ordum is that we need DIDs, we need on-chain accounts for aggregating all of this data, for aggregating our discussions, our engagement with the community, our deliveries, every single grant we applied for, how we performed, and whether we are active in governance or not ourselves. We definitely need reputation-based voting, and something that we've been thinking about is called contribution-based voting. So for an example, we could give people voting rights based on how much they contributed to the network in one way or another. So if we go back to the beginning and think of the sub-DAOs and smaller organizations within a blockchain and individuals, each person could contribute in XYZ way. And if there was a project management software on chain, then all of these contributions could be aggregated, and that could become voting power, which then potentially tells us, starts diluting the system of financial power. But that's just a hypothesis for now. In regards to reporting, We probably need a UI and credentials where the communities issuing the funding could evaluate a delivery and keep it transparent. In regards to turnout, as mentioned, we require education, but also governance is very complicated. And all of the documentation is scattered. And because it also involves network upgrades and funding, it is very difficult to understand for the average user what this even means. So we do need a seamless UI in order to even vote, but also to familiarize ourselves with what governance itself is. In order to resolve the people problems, unfortunately, we just need better people. We need people that will vote with integrity and vote with good faith, because there are certain things that we just can't hand over to a blockchain, because ultimately, if we hand over, if we design a system that tries to keep its users accountable, that system might not be that good for us, because eventually we will be controlled by the system, and at that point, it stops generating value for us, and we become the people just maintaining the system. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Right on time, but we have maybe a minute for a quick question if there is one.
Yeah, I can scream. Maybe I don't need that.
So it stays recorded. Wait.
Thanks. For contribution-based voting, what do you currently have in place? Do you have anything on your mind that you're working with or tried out, or any ideas of implementing this?
So right now, we are building out feature by
I'm going to shill you something.
Yeah, sure. Right now, we don't have anything yet. We're trying to basically enable people first to easily apply to grants, and then that comes later. But the idea is to eventually have a project management software where people can input all of their tasks and what they've happened, and they can actually develop their own governance model based on that.
Great. I'm going to shill you praise. It does not need all the stuff that you just mentioned. Basically, it's built within your communications channels. It tracks all the contributions, and you just give it a command, and it spills out all the contributions of one single member of your DAO or whoever, your organization. And based on that, you can build reputation scores, whatever. So, we can talk about it later, but I think there's something in place for that. And I think it's a spot on that you mentioned that, because that's a problem with current governance models in DAOs as well, because we cannot actually have a good governance system without these contribution-based voting methods. And anyway, just was asking because if there's anything else that you were maybe working on, I was interested to hear about it. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Xylo.
Cheers.
So we're continuing in 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.